Part 3 of the styles video is going to dive into more of the label styles, as labels are a very large component of Civil 3D, and almost every Civil 3D object has a label style associated with it. Now these label styles can pull any number of information from your actual object, whether it's an alignment, surface, profile, parcels, grading, or really anything in the list on the left here. So all the way there's general label styles all the way down to intersection styles and match line label styles. So to dive into a few of the label styles here, we're just going to quickly go into the general ones under label styles. We can have notes. So we can do a general Civil 3D note. We can not edit label style defaults. We're going to create a new one. And we're going to see what kind of options we can have in here. So we're just going to leave a new general note label style. Under the general tab, again, make sure your text style is set up. Layer label visibility is true. If it's set to false, it's not going to show up at all. So always make sure this is set to true. And make sure it's on a proper layer. So C-label, if we have a C-label note. If not, we can make a new one. So all I did was just click the new box and typed in C-label note. Under the layout tab, this is where we can build our label, and we've done it a little bit before, but we're going to dive into it more. Let me get that back. So under the component name, we only have one item in here at the moment. It's a piece of text. And the name is just the name of the component name. So if we change this, it updates up here. Yes, we want to see it. The anchor component, now what is this label anchored to? So imagine there's a little invisible anchor point over here. It's anchored to something. So currently it's anchored to the feature, and that's whatever item we use it for. If we use it for a surface or an alignment, it'll be anchored to that. Now general note labels, there's not many options we can put in here. So if we go into the text component editor, and again how I got there, under the note, the three ... and inside of here, so there's only a few options we can pull for a general note label. That's northing, easting, point elevation, or grid eastings, grid northings, lat and longs, scale factors, or convergences. So let's throw northing and easting of a specific point in here. So we'll go northing. We'll leave all this default, meters, 3 decimal places. We'll go easting for the second one. And we'll add in point elevation. So in front of these we can type N:, E:, and Z: for elevation. So we'll click OK. And as we see over here, it's popped up with north, east, Z. So that is just a general note label style. We'll click OK. And let's put this in and see what it looks like. So there's one spot where we can access all Civil 3D labels. That's under General, Add Labels. So everything we create in here is going to populate itself in here. So if we click on Feature, you see we have a whole option of labels, or different features here. And then under the label type, well, we want a note. And here's our label style. So there's 4 of them here. They correspond with the 4 over here. So I'm going to choose our new general note label style and the marker. So this is what it's going to be attached to, and I'll show you what it looks like. So I'm just going to choose standard, and I'm going to click add. And it's going to ask me where I want to put it. Now I'm going to click on the surface here, and it's grabbed the elevation of that contour. So 6,125. Now if I click on, say, this alignment here somewhere, it's grabbed the elevation of the alignment, but it has the northings and eastings of it as well. Now this surface actually isn't at 6,125. If I hover over it, we're at 1,225. What this label is doing is grabbing exaggeration off the surface. So if I just go and turn that off, under Edit Surface Style, 3D Geometry, I'm just going to use Surface Elevations, and I drag and drop this back onto the contour, it should update. Maybe it's permanent. So it looks like the Z value is actually permanent in here and it didn't want to update. So again, we can just quickly delete that. I'll just add a new one in, and it's at the proper Z value. Now, the boundary in this label is kind of close to the letters, so let's change that a little bit. So if we come back into our new general note label style, we'll edit it. Under the layout tab, there's a border visibility true. It's rounded rectangular. Let's make it a rectangle. The gap. So the gap is what we need to change. So if we want to make it a little bit more off, I'm just going to change it to 0.75 millimeters. And as you see, it's updated the border. So that's a general note style. There's a few more in here. So line styles, curve styles, these go hand in hand. So if we have a polyline, I'll just draw a quick polyline and I'll put an arc on it. So we'll have a line and an arc. Let's go make a new line style. So I just right click new. We're not going to worry about any of the layers, but make sure to set these up. Under the layout tab, so under line and curves, we have to pay attention to the component name. So we'll be changing the bearing and the distance. So we want these to display specific things. Direction arrow right here is generally not needed when we put bearings in there, or azimuths. So we're going to delete that out of there. So that's gotten rid of the direction arrow. So under the bearing, I'm going to rename this azimuth. In the contents, I'm going to select the expression over here. So to select an expression, if you just click in the middle, it'll select your whole expression and it'll pop up the settings over here. So the few options we can choose here is general overall length. Now this will give the length of the entire polyline no matter how long it is and how many nodes it has. If we want to know the area of the polyline, we can pull that off there too. General segment length. So if we want to know just the segment length of one segment, we would use this one here. General segment direction, so that's what we want to use. And as you can see in here, there's a few more options we can pull off. X's and Y's and Z's of the starts and ends. But we want to leave it as general segment direction. And I'm going to change it to DMS with no spaces. This is just going to make your label skinnier. It won't be as long. And under the measurement type, I don't want bearings, so I don't want to see north 50 degrees, 00 minutes, 00 seconds, east. I just want it to display as a pure number from north. So I'm going to go north azimuth, and my precision is 1 second. Rounding round normal, and remember to force it over. If you do not click this over arrow, it's not going to overwrite it. And as you see here, that is updated. So I'm going to click OK. And as you see in here, it's updated this label. Let's go into the distance. And let's add a meter sign behind, or an M behind it to show meters. So we'll go OK. And that's updated in there. So that's our new general line label style. Let's create a curve style, a curve label style. So this will be our line, and there's our curve. So right click, new. Under the layout tab, again, not table tag, we're going to modify the distance and radius. So currently this label is showing L length, so the general segment length to 3 decimals, I'm okay with that. The radius to 3 decimals. But let's stack this in a stack of 3. So we have length, radius, and we're going to add delta in there. So to add delta in there, we're going to need to get the quick code for delta, which is /u plus 0394. Now nothing has actually popped up yet, but when we click OK, it will. So we're just going to type /u plus 0394 is equal to, and we're going to find the general segment total angle. And then remember to click the arrow to add it in. And the settings on the left here are what's going to translate into the right here. So our precision is 0.01. That's okay. We're going to click OK. And as you see in here, that /u plus 0394 is turned into a delta symbol. And let's make this text height 3 millimeters. And we'll leave everything the same by default. Again, we could add a border around it if we want. We could put a background mask if we want to hide any contours behind it or anything behind it. Background masking is generally a good idea. Now ignore how the text changed. It won't print like this. And we're going to click OK. So we've created our two label styles. Under our feature, in the drop down now, we're no longer under note, we've gone to line and curve. So we're going to select line and curve, and we can either do single segments or multiple segments. So the multiple will do the entire polyline. The single segment will do this one and then this one wherever you click. Let's do multiple segments, and I'm going to select the new ones we created. So the new general line label style and the new general curve label style, and I'm going to add them onto this line. So I'm going to click over here, and it's placed both those labels on in the center of the lines. So if we select the polyline, here's our midpoint. Now this line is going at 58 degrees, 15 minutes, 14 seconds, and it's 165.483 meters long. This curve, the length is 144.066 meters, the radius is 117.67, and our delta is 70.15 degrees. Now the great thing about labels and label styles when they're attached to items is if you move the item, the label will update. So I'm going to take my arc and I'm going to stretch it way over here. As you see, the label has moved, it's still in the center, but our length is now almost 200 meters, our radius is 365, and our delta is 31. Same thing happens with our line over here. So I'm going to stretch it and move it over. We're now at 69 degrees, and it's 191.968 meters long. So let's go back into the curve label styles, and let's look at the other information we can add in. So I'm just going to go into the distance and radius and click the drop down. So again, pretty much the same options as the line labels. We can do lengths, areas, that's the overall length. General segment length, if you want just one piece, we'll use that. The angle, if there's a start or end direction, we can add those in. Curve chord lengths, and again, start XYZ, end XYZ, and the curve center XY. So all that can be added in to a curve label. And we'll quickly take a look at the line label ones. I'll just go under distance. And again, pretty much the same information, just slightly different. There's no radiuses in here for that. So just click OK. And that's line and curve labels. Now these are very handy for labeling parcels, or if you have line work that you want to know the direction or the length of it. Very handy for that. You can label the whole thing at once. Or if you go single segment, we'll just choose our two as again. And if we click add, single segment puts it along the line wherever you click. So a little bit more control, but a little bit more clicking. So that was line and curve labels. Marker label, there's no really marker labels. Link labels, shape labels, these are more for other parts of Civil 3D, and we're not going to dive into them. Under point, so point label styles. Oops, sorry. This is where we can display on our points the information we want to see. So if I turn on my survey, and the survey text, and let it come in. We zoom in on the points. So this will be our label text, or our label style. So let's make a new label style for points. It's going to come in on C-serve, that's probably a default setting. Under the layout tab, so in here we have point number, point elevation, and point description. So we could probably put all these in the same little component, or you can split them up, doesn't really matter. I'm going to put them all in the same one. So I deleted the two other ones in here. We're going to just change this to point information. And then under the contents, so I'm going to delete that. So inside of the text component editor for point labels, we have a few options here we can add in. On some plans, we'll use point number, so we want to know the actual point number so we can reference it in a table. If you have a lot of points on the plan, keep it clean, only do point number, and show all the information you need in the table. So we'll add in point number. If you name your points, generally points do not get named, as naming is very descriptive and you can't use any uppercase letters. Now you can make them display as uppercase in the point properties here, but in the actual point list we cannot do them uppercase. We like to show eastings, northings, and we'll add in point elevations. So we can throw some text in front of this. We'll do number, easting, northing, elevation, the Z. And then we'll do description. We'll add the description one in as well. Now there's raw description, full description. They both say the same thing. We can also add in grid eastings and northings, lat and longs if our drawing is in that. If there's a point scale factor, survey point, or if it's even locked. So we'll just add these 5 options in here. Actually, let's add the locked point in there. So in industry, you'd see mainly these 5 things, not necessarily the locked point, but we'll click OK. And this is what our label is going to preview as. So point number 1 or number 2, easting, northing, Z. Description is going to be random because we can't tell off the top right now what it is. And it's not locked. So we'll click OK. We'll give it a second. And then if we select our point, we can go into properties. We can change the label style. So if we go new point label style, this is our point label style here. So this is the way it's displaying. Now if we edit this point, so we'll right click edit points. If I change the description to existing ground, our description is updated. And you can probably lock it through the prospector tab in your tool space if you want to go looking for it. So that's point styles, or point label styles. Again, in here, I have some label styles showing just description, just elevation, one showing elevation and description, point number with elevation. Again, this label here, the top 5 categories, are in this one: point number, northing, easting, elevation, description, and then our new one here. So that was point label styles. Let's move on to surface label styles. Now this one's a little bit bigger. We have a few more options to show. So there's our point. We're going to turn our points off so they don't get in the way. Now we have 4 options here for label styles: contours, slopes, spot elevations, and watersheds. So let's take a look at the contour labels. Right click, we'll make a new one. Under the layout tab, the component name surface elevation. So for contours, we're only going to show surface elevation. If we come into the text component editor, we only have 3 options here: name, description, or surface elevation. So why make a contour label showing anything other than an elevation? So let's change the precision to 5 decimals. Remember, add it in. You'll never show any more than 3 decimals. Usually on a contour label, we show no decimals. It's to the nearest meter. So we'll click OK. And we'll change this to 2.5. Again, we can change colors in here. Let's change it to blue. And let's put a border around it. that is also blue. So we'll click OK. And now it's in our list here. So I've got some already set up for 2 mil and 2.5 mil text. Let's add this one into our surface here. So we'll go to our Add Labels drop-down. We'll go to Surface. We want contours. Now we can do single contour, so 1 by 1 by 1 by 1. We can do multiple contours. We'll draw kind of a polyline across the surface. Or we can do contour multiple at interval. So we'll draw our line across the surface to define our contours. And then it's going to ask us for a spacing. And it's going to put a contour label along the line every, say, 100 meters. And you're going to get a bunch of labels. So we'll just stick with contour multiple. And we'll select the ones that we just created. So the major contour label style, we'll use that one. Minor contour label style, so do we want to edit them all or label them all or only a few? And again, this can be changed afterwards. And do we have any user-defined contours? Now I can go and say I want to contour exactly halfway between these two. And we can label that one as well if we want. But we're just going to go none. So I'm going to add them in and we're going to take a look at what it looks like. So read the command line, specify your first point. So I want to label contours from here to here looks good. We'll go over, and again, it's like drawing a fence line across where you want your contour labels to go. So that looks good. We've got a whole bunch of contour labels in here, and again, there usually is no decimals on it. So to show you the difference, I'll use the ones I created beforehand, and I'll draw them across the same line. So 1,230, 1,230. Again, this is to 1 decimal place if you have any 0.5 contours. But again, it's easy enough to write to edit your label style. So I'm using the 2.5. Go into the surface elevation, select the expression, not feet, to one precision of 1 meter. Click OK, and they've updated. So very easy to switch what you need. And again, as these are on a sort of a fence line, you can move that around. Now sometimes you'll see the actual label line showing. So it's going to show you where the line is. It makes it easier to grab, but that also prints. So just in your properties window, you can change that to false, or again back to true. Now say we had a drawing scale of 1 to 5,000. We'll quickly get rid of those. Now these are all overlapping, and to be honest, we don't need to see every meter or even every 5 meters on a contour label line. So we can select our contour labels. We can come over to properties again, and we can change the display of our minor ones to false. So we've set all the minor ones to false. They're still there, they're just not displaying. And we're only displaying the majors. So that gives us more than enough information that we need. And again, same with user contours. We can have that true or false. Now, if you wanted to have 2 different styles in there, so I want my majors to display blue, my minors to display red, that is entirely possible as well. So that's contour labels. Let's look into slope labels. So I've got some slope labels showing percentage and rise over run pre-built, but we'll make a new one. And again, set up your layers, C-label-surf. Now under the layout, so these ones, direction arrow is a good thing. It shows us which way the surface is pointing. So we'll leave direction arrow on. Maybe we'll make the arrowhead 5 millimeters, and we'll do the minimum length 30. So again, that's all modifiable. If you want to add it in, if you want to add anything in really, you can click the little A, we can add lines. You can insert a block if you want. There's direction arrow. And then there's also some reference text. So do we want to reference an alignment, any points or parcels or profiles? Not really. So we'll just cancel that. We're going to go to the surface slope. And the surface slope is the piece of text attached to it. Now 3 decimals on a slope is not needed. So let's add surface slope. We want it in percent for this one. we'll go to 0.1% and we'll add it over. But we're also going to add in surface slope, rise over run. So this is to show you the other one. So we're going to add in rise over run below it. So we'll type %, and then this one will be rise over run. What other options were in here? We can do decimal, per mile, or run over rise, but we won't add any of those. The other options we can add is the slope distance, horizontal distance, slope depth. Now, in a proper template, you'd only show surface slope. Let's add in the distance and the depth. I believe this is just the rise over run numbers. And again, we can remove them afterwards if that's not what we want. So we'll click OK. Again, you can change the text size, 5.5 if you want. Try and keep things consistent. So if you've done 2.5 text, do 2.5 text the rest of the time. So we'll click OK. Now let's add that label in and see what it looks like. So if we go surface, slope, we use our new surface slope and we'll add it. Now if you read down here, there's 1 point or 2 point. So I'll show you both of them. We're going to do a 1 point label first of all. And we're going to click where we want it. Now it's not giving us any information, but let's try the 2 point labels. So we'll add it again, select 2 point. Now 2 points asks for a start and an end. So it asks for the start of your label and the end of your label. So if I go ahead and do this one backwards now, no matter what way the surface is sloping, my label is going to show the way I've drawn it in. So these ones here show the perpendicular slope of the actual surface at that point where you place the label. So if I move it, it updates. Now let's go ahead and remove these rise over run. So this is the length, this is the change in elevation. So basically it shows you the rise over run just as total numbers. So if we edit that under the surface slope, let's remove everything but the percentage. We'll click OK. We'll click OK. And one thing I've seen here, it comes with a built-in percentage. So we can remove that percentage from there as well. So again, under surface slope, we'll remove the %. And as easy as that was, that modifies all the labels you have put in. So if you put 3,000 labels in and you realize you made a mistake, it's not the end of the world. You just go remove that piece you don't want to add in and click OK. So again, as you move these, they are linked to the surface. They are dynamic. So that's a great thing about Civil 3D, is the objects are attached to the actual item you click on. Now these 2 point labels, again, they don't give a true representation of the slope on the surface as you're selecting 2 points. So it's telling you the slope between here and here. So again, they can be useful, but generally 1 point slope labels. So finally, let's take a look at spot elevation labels. So under spot elevation, again, I've got some spot elevations to 1 decimal or 3 decimals. Again, depending on the plan that you're working on, will gauge the precision that's needed for the actual label. So a detailed plan, an issued for construction plan, you'll need to provide more detail, say 3 decimal places, than a general layout plan. You'll go to 1 or 2 decimals. So we're going to right click, we're going to create a new spot elevation. Under the general tab, again, just make sure this is set up. Under the layout, again, surface name or surface elevation comes in by default. Keep things consistent, 2.5. Under the contents, let's take a look at what we can add in. So, of course, there's surface elevation. What else do we have in here? We can do northings and eastings, grid northings, eastings, lats, and longs. So basically X, Y, and Z. Now, it's kind of the same options as a point, but these are not Kogo points. They're not linked as points. They don't take up the room that points do. So if you want to do X, Y, Z, this is a good way to get elevations because they dynamically read off the surface and we don't have to snap to anything. So let's add in easting. Oops. Put a space in. Add in our northing. So again, we can go X, Y, Z, or even easting, northing, and elevation. So you can do whatever you want. So we'll click OK. We'll click OK. And then under the feature surface, spot elevation, we can add in our one we've done, and we can choose which marker it's attached to. So I'll click add, and it'll ask where do you want it. So I'm going to put it there. I'll put this one over here. I'll put another one there. And we'll put one at this low point. So again, as I move this label around, it's dynamically attached to the surface. The elevation, easting, and northing all update. Now on, again, easting, northing, elevation, you can show them all. We can edit it. Let's display elevation only. So again, come back in here. It's as simple as deleting everything you don't want to see. So click OK. OK. Now the last option in here for the spot elevations is spot elevation on a grid. So if you need to run a grid of points, instead of clicking 1,000 times on a 10 by 10 or 100 by 100 grid, we can do spot elevations on a grid. So we want to use our new spot elevation style. I'm going to click add. It's going to ask you to specify your base point. So I want a base point of here. Now grid rotation, I want it 0 degrees, so I want it perfectly east-west. Now my spacing, let's go every 10 meters easting and 10 meters northing, and the upper right point. So I want to run a grid of points in that box. And again, it gives you the option, do you want to modify anything? We'll just accept defaults, and again, give this a few minutes, as it could take time depending on how big your drawing is or how many points you're putting in. Alright, that only took about a minute, and it gave me a bunch of laggy points. Now, the reason they appeared like this is they're showing the scale down here, so I'm going to switch this to we'll go 1 to 500, and we'll see what it looks like. And here the points are at 1 to 500. The grid has changed. Here's our point. And it's done a 10 by 10 grid. Now there is a marker missing. The marker I have set to C-serve, but let's go and change the layer of that marker. So this marker is one of the general styles, and again, this video is getting kind of long, so we'll cover more label styles in another video. So under general multi-purpose styles, marker styles, I'm going to quickly edit this one. Under the display, I'm just going to place this on layer 0 for now. And again, maybe let's go C-MRKR marker. And we'll go OK. Now the color is white, but I have it set to magenta. And if we click OK, these ones should appear if our layer 0 is turned on. And there they are. So again, two different styles here that we're showing, a marker style and a label style attached to one piece of dynamic label. So more than one bit of information can be included in a label style. You see here we have two now. And again, like every other label that we've talked about, these are dynamically attached to the surface, so they do edit as you move them around. So that was part 3 of the video. We quickly talked about some label styles under general, points, surfaces. There are quite a few more, and I'll be making more videos to show those.